4,500 years ago, a civilization built cities so advanced they could make a modern urban planner weep. Streets laid out in a perfect grid, homes with their own private wells and bathrooms, and a citywide sanitation system that put ancient Rome to shame. This was the world of the Indus Valley Civilization. They were masters of measurement, pioneers of trade, and architects of a society that covered 1 million square kilometers. And then they vanished. Not with a bang, but with a whisper, leaving behind silent cities and a mystery that has haunted us for a century. Stretching across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, this civilization, also known as the Harappan, was one of the three great cradles of society, right up there with Egypt and Mesopotamia. After flourishing for centuries, it hit its absolute peak between 2600 and 1900 BCE. In this golden age, more than 1,000 cities and settlements dotted the landscape. And these weren't just towns, they were masterpieces of precision. The Harappans created one of the world's first systems of standardized weights and measures. So accurate, their smallest unit was a mere 1.6 millimeters, about the thickness of a modern credit card. Think about their bricks. Every single one followed a strict, uniform size ratio. It was as if every brick made across an area the size of Texas and California combined was perfectly identical, hinting at an incredible level of centralized control. Their trade network was a superhighway of the ancient world, with their unique seals and beads found as far away as Mesopotamia in modern-day Iraq. They were masters of metal, working with copper, bronze, lead, and tin. They may have even pioneered wheeled transport with bullock carts that look eerily similar to those still used in the region today. And yet, for all their genius, we can't understand a single word they wrote. Their script, a complex system of symbols found on thousands of small stone seals, remains a complete mystery. It's like finding a diary filled with incredible secrets, but the key has been lost forever. It holds their government, their beliefs, their identity, and maybe the answer to why they disappeared. By 1800 BCE, the pulse of this great civilization began to weaken. Trade routes dried up. The great cities started to empty, their advanced drains and sewers crumbling into disuse. By 1700 BCE, most of their urban centers were abandoned, left to be swallowed by the very dust they were built from. How could a society of an estimated 5 million people, at the height of its power, collapse so completely? For a long time, the most popular theory was also the most dramatic: a violent conquest. The story went that around 1500 BCE, nomadic tribes known as the Aryans swept down from Central Asia with horse-drawn chariots and iron weapons, obliterating the peaceful Harappan cities. This idea, first proposed by European scholars and seemingly supported by scattered skeletons found at the city of Mohenjo Daro, painted a simple and brutal picture. It was a good story, but the deeper archaeologists dug, the more it unraveled. The evidence for a massive invasion just wasn't there. The skeletons at Mohenjo Daro showed no signs of battle wounds. They looked more like victims of rushed burials, perhaps from a disease outbreak. Archaeologists found no layers of ash from burning cities, no weapon stockpiles, no signs of a desperate last stand. The consensus now is that this epic invasion story is a myth. So if it wasn't murder, was it an accident? The Indus Valley is a seismically active region. A monster earthquake could have been devastating, not just by leveling cities, but by literally changing the course of rivers, the lifelines of their civilization. We also see clear evidence of massive floods, with thick layers of silt burying entire city blocks. But while these disasters could certainly wreck individual cities, they don't explain the slow, steady abandonment of an entire civilization across such a vast area. A single flood or earthquake couldn't empty 1,000 towns. Something bigger and much slower had to be at play. If the killer wasn't an outside force, maybe the rot started from within. Imagine their society as a finely tuned engine. For centuries, it ran perfectly, powering huge cities with tens of thousands of people. But that engine needed fuel. The Harappans were master brickmakers, but baking billions of bricks required a staggering amount of wood. Over centuries, their need for fuel could have led to mass deforestation, changing their environment and causing the soil to wash away. On top of that, Think about farming the same land for 1,000 years. It's like using a battery over and over without ever recharging it. Eventually, the soil's nutrients would be stripped bare, leading to smaller harvests and widespread food shortages. We also see signs of economic decay. That thriving trade with Mesopotamia seems to have dwindled after 1900 BCE. Cutting off that major economic artery would have made their whole society incredibly fragile. This theory paints a picture of a system that became too big and too rigid to adapt. The perfect drains begin to clog. The standardized weights aren't so standard anymore. The great granaries, once symbols of abundance, become harder to fill. This wasn't a sudden death, it was a slow decay. This paints a picture not of a civilization being murdered, but of one slowly starving, its great cities becoming burdens that people simply walked away from. In recent decades, a new and powerful culprit has emerged, backed by a mountain of scientific evidence: climate change. The Indus civilization was a child of the monsoon. Its entire agricultural system, its very existence, depended on the predictable rhythm of river floods fed by those seasonal rains. But what happens if the rhythm breaks and the rains just stop? That's exactly what ancient climate data shows. Scientists have learned to read the Earth's diary, pulling clues from ancient mud at the bottom of lakes and from the inside of cave formations. These natural archives tell a terrifying story. Around 4,200 years ago, the climate in the Indus region began to shift dramatically. The strong summer monsoons that had nurtured the civilization for centuries weakened and became dangerously unreliable. This wasn't a bad year or two. This was a long-term drying trend that spanned centuries. Research points to a series of severe, multi-decade droughts that struck right as the civilization was declining. One of these droughts may have lasted for 90 years, longer than a single human lifetime. For a society built on water, this was a death sentence. The Ghaggar-Hakra River, a massive system that was the backbone for hundreds of Harappan towns, began to dry up and eventually vanished. With less rain and shrinking rivers, the Harappans' advanced water systems were rendered useless. Agriculture would have collapsed, leading to famine. The great, dense cities became impossible to support. This theory explains the disappearance not as a mystery, but as a massive migration. Faced with an existential crisis, the Harappans did the only thing they could. They moved. Archaeological evidence shows that as the great western cities emptied out, new, smaller, more rural villages popped up to the east and south, in places where the rains were more reliable. The people didn't die out. They adapted. They decentralized. They walked away from their urban dream because the climate that had built it had turned against them. This pile of evidence points to a chilling conclusion. One of the world's most sophisticated ancient civilizations was brought to its knees by a force completely beyond its control. It's a powerful, 4,000-year-old warning about the delicate dance between humanity and climate. But what do you think is the most compelling theory? Was it a perfect storm of climate change and internal decay? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find these ancient mysteries as fascinating as we do, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation.